His father had been a tremendous philanderer, a womanizer through and through, and it seemed like something he simply needed to do. He once even told the British Prime Minister, "If I don't have a woman every 3 days, I get a headache." When most people hear the name John F. Kennedy, they think of glamour, charisma, and the golden glow of Camelot. He was the man who inspired a generation, charmed the world, and embodied youthful hope for America's future. But behind the polished image of the perfect first family, another story was unfolding, one the public wouldn't learn for half a century. This is the account of Mimi Alford, a 19-year-old White House intern who says she was pulled into a secret relationship with the president himself. In the summer of 1962, while the nation buzzed with historic movements and Cold War pressures, Mimi Beardsley, later known as Mimi Alford, arrived in Washington as a bright-eyed college student from Wheaton College. Her internship in the White House press office felt like a dream and opportunity to witness history up close. The country was on edge as civil rights protests grew stronger and the Cuban Missile Crisis approached. But for Mimi, these national anxieties faded behind the excitement of being inside the White House. Just 4 days into her internship, she accepted an invitation to swim in the White House pool from Kennedy's close aide, Dave Powers. She had no idea the president would join them. That afternoon changed her life forever. Mimi later said she was invited upstairs to the private residence where the president guided her to war at the edge of his bed and initiated a sexual encounter. It was her first. Looking back, she said, "I think he did take advantage. I was so young." In one afternoon, she went from a hopeful intern to someone carrying a secret that shaped decades of her life. The affair continued for roughly 18 months. Kennedy used the alias Michael Carter when calling to arrange their meetings. Their encounters were brief, discreet, and surrounded by silence. When the First Lady traveled, Mimi was brought to the residence through side entrances or during quiet hours. She recalled gatherings of young women by the pool, arranged by Dave Powers, drinks, jokes, and the unspoken awareness of the president's presence. In one moment, she later described as humiliating and confusing. She was encouraged to perform a sexual act on Powers while Kennedy watched. She said she didn't understand why she complied, only that she wanted to please him. She didn't know there were other women. She thought she was special. The imbalance of power was enormous. He was 45 years old and the most powerful man on earth. She was 19 and still learning how to navigate adulthood. She always addressed him as Mr. President, and she said he never kissed her on the lips, an intimate detail that made his emotional distance painfully clear. Reflecting years later, she said she didn't believe she could have resisted him. Whether people call it consensual or coercive, the power difference defined everything. "The fact is, I was vulnerable and the president was a very powerful man," she said. Their intimacy ended by August 1963, but the emotional impact stayed. Mimi returned to college and became engaged to her boyfriend, Tony. After Kennedy's assassination, she confessed everything to him. They married anyway, but the secret followed them for decades and eventually contributed to the collapse of their marriage. For nearly 40 years, Mimi stayed silent. Only when historians uncovered her name in an old transcript did her story begin to surface. In 2011, she finally told her own version in her memoir, Once Upon a Secret. She said it wasn't revenge, was reclaiming her voice. She never called the relationship assault, but admitted she couldn't have said no. Her reflections revealed the complicated emotions she carried: guilt, confusion, and unresolved questions. At one point she said she wasn't sure she would do anything differently if she were 19, again an honest but painful admission from a woman who had finally stopped hiding. When her story became public, it shook the polished Camelot image and forced a larger conversation about power, consent, and the way society protects powerful men. JFK had long been mythologized as a heroic figure, while the private lives around him were treated as rumors. Mimi's detailed account challenged that mythology. Some praised her for her honesty, others doubted her motives. Historians pointed out that her timeline and details aligned with what was already known about Kennedy's behavior and other women in his orbit. Her revelations added to what people already suspected, that Kennedy's private life was far more reckless than his public charm suggested. His rumored affairs with Marilyn Monroe, Judith Campbell Exner, and others painted a pattern of seduction and secrecy. Mimi's story stood out because it happened not in secret hideaways, but inside the White House itself. Her truth blurred the boundary between public leadership and private desire, revealing a side of Camelot built on silence, power, and vulnerability. Her decision to finally speak brought complexity to a story long overshadowed by glamour, reminding the world that even the most admired figures can leave behind hidden scars.